Well, in Stephen King's wonderful book on writing, he suggests you leave it, I think, for about 2 months. But I wouldn't have the patience to wait for 2 months. So normally I give myself maybe a 2 or 3 week break, try and read other books, go to the cinema, go to the theatre, soak in different kinds of creative outlets, and then come back to it with a fresh eye, maybe 3 to 4 weeks after. And it is amazing what you see and what you notice, and the gaps you notice, and the problems that you see. Because when you're writing it, it's like anything. It's very hard to be objective about your own work. So you need to step away from it, and you need to come back as a reader. And it's amazing the things you'll see, the problems with the plot, the problems with the pace, maybe characters behaving out of character now that you know them so well, now that you've got to the end of the book.
So I have my first draft. So I look at it, and I see, when I read it through, what I'm looking to do is to cut. And in the process of cutting, you will then rewrite. Cutting is not, contrary to popular belief, a matter of going through a text and going, oh, I can cut that and put a comma in there, that but isn't right. No. You print out the text, even if you've written it on the computer screen. This job has to be done with paper. You have your whole text, and then you start to turn the pages. And what you are looking for, this is not my idea, this is Ernest Hemingway's suggestion, the biggest thing what you can cut, that's what you're looking for. The biggest single thing. So you're looking to see if you can cut an entire section. Maybe your book has got 4 100-page sections. Can you cut 100 pages just like that?
You can buy a combination of concentration in a way, but also letting go, and then diligence in going over what you've done in that free-form way, and maybe moulding it a little and tweezing it and tweaking it here and there. You can get a first draft that's very, very close to what it should be. Now, there'll always be something that you won't get in. There'll always be something that you won't get in until later, and that an outside eye will spot. But that's what I try to do.
The second biggest thing you can cut would probably be a character. The third biggest thing you can cut would probably be a chapter. The fourth, a section of a chapter. The fifth, a paragraph. The sixth, a sentence. Then the seventh, a bit of a sentence, and the eighth, a word. But you don't try and do all of this at the same time. You look through the whole thing and see, is there one big thing you can cut? Then you look through the whole thing and see, is there the next biggest thing that you can cut? So you'd have to look through the whole thing 8 or 10 times.
The main things you have to look out for are, I think, repetition, chunks of information being sort of landed into the book. Like it's very hard to set up a story, but it's, and really the first maybe 4 or 5 chapters are probably the most important, because yes, you're trying to create a backstory, you're trying to introduce your characters, you're trying to, you want the reader to know who the character is, but you have to drop in information in a subtle way and in kind of small compartments, because you can't just do a big dump in the beginning, because the reader will get bored. So those kind of things to look out for. Also, as I said, by the end of the book, you'll know your character better, so you'll know if their dialogue in the beginning rings true. Other things to look out for, I suppose, are, well, for example, I once had a character who was pregnant for 20 months. So it's very important to have a calendar. Actually, now I do a calendar, so I know what age they are when they started, what's going on, and where they're going. And I recently was talking to a crime writer who killed somebody in chapter 3 and forgot, and they were still going in chapter 20. So things like that. I mean, that might sound crazy, but actually when you're kind of in the book and you're very immersed in it, you often don't see things that can be quite obvious. Even little things like characters whose names are too similar. Like I had a Gary and a Greg, and that wasn't working. Just kind of simple things like that. And obviously, when you go back and read it, if it isn't working, you're just going to have to accept it and go back and do a big rewrite, because there's just no point in sending it out if it's not the best work that it can be and if it's not the best you can do. I made that mistake. My first 2 attempts at a novel, I wrote them, I thought they were great, I sent them out, and I was turned down all over the world. I sent them everywhere. I was so enthusiastic, and they were turned down by absolutely everybody. And that's when I realised that I needed help. Outside help, and that's when the creative writing group came into my life.
You have to put it all in before you take things out. I said earlier that the decision as to what you leave out is as important as to what you keep in. But often you can only make the decision about what you leave out after you've put it in. Yeah. Hemingway argued, and correctly, that he called it the iceberg theory, that when you take something out, having written it and put it in, the reader will know it. And he's right, but it has to have been written first. You write something that's 400 pages, and the first word leads to the second word, leads to the third word. So they are like a line of dominoes, one thing knocking down the next, knocking down the third. So there is an internal coherence in the material, and there is a sublimated code. There is a directionality and connectedness. When you take something out, all the words leading up to that, and then all the words leading on from that, contain a buried code pertaining to that missing material, and the reader will pick up on it.
I mean, I still sometimes go back and read books that I've written, and I still can see things that I would change. So I don't think you're ever really finished. However, you have to, at some point, just draw a line in the sand. So I think, it's very important to go over it and make it the best it can be and step away from it and come back to it and do all those kind of things. But then there comes a point where you just have to let it go, because you can keep going over it for the rest of your life. When it's the best it can be, when you're almost sick of looking at it and you're almost sick of your characters. And that's a normal emotion, by the way. So, for anybody starting out, by the time I finish my book and I've rewritten it, I am so sick of it, I never want to see it again, because you're worn out with it. So that's a normal emotion. And that probably is the time to send it out. But I was overzealous in the beginning and I sent everything out too quickly. You must go over it, you must step away, you must come back to it. You must make it the best it can be, and then absolutely send it out, and fingers crossed.